Okay, well, hello everyone. This is Wilson Cole. Some of you guys know me from Adams, Evans, and Ross, which is where I spend most of my time. But we also own Recruiting and Staffing Solutions magazine, and it acts as our marketing arm for Adams, Evans, and Ross, Backdoor Hire, and United States Staffing, and others. And I have Allie, our brand manager, and my youngest daughter on the conference. How are you doing this morning, Allie?
Doing well. How about yourself?
Doing fine, doing fine. Well, what I want to cover as far as on this particular one, Allie, is some of the things that we're doing, because what we're doing is we're kind of pulling the curtain away. And by the way, if anyone notices, the backdrop for me is different. I'm always, it seems like in Atlanta, but I also have a place down on the beach. And so I had snuck out this week, and so I'm working remotely. So you don't see the wood grain, you see more of the pastel. So anyway, I'm kind of down here doing the Bahama Bob. So anyway, what we were going to cover on this one for everybody is how we utilize different assets in doing one function can give you 10 or 15 different collateral. Like right now, Allie and I are doing this podcast where we're going to talk about how to record a podcast and how many different ways that you can get utilization over that and why. What's going to happen in an overview is we're going to record this podcast, and then we can have the video to use on YouTube. We can also have our content writers watch the video and write an article. We can also strip the audio from it. It becomes our podcast. We can also have, this picture that you see here and use as memes in our Facebook. Allie, kind of walk through some of the ways that we'll utilize some of these assets to generate leads and get better brand awareness.
Well, you definitely want to change up the way you get information out there, because if you think about, there are visual learners, there are auditory learners, and people want different types of content in different ways. So you might want a nice article to read when you're weighing in a crowded airport, but if you're on the road driving, you might rather have that same content in an auditory version where you could just listen to it. So you really have to be aware of what your clients want to hear and what ways that they want it. You don't want to just give it to them in one way, and I would not suggest doing it back to back, but you could post one article and then a couple months go by, you could post the same podcast. So you could really get a lot of use out of one specific content.
Okay. Because that's one of the things, there's always arguments over how much content should you create in a day or in a week or in a month. And I think that there's valid arguments on all of them, but I think the biggest thing is you make something of value. And that's one of the things that, from the marketing company, as the magazine and the marketing company expand, we're drinking our own Kool-Aid. We're trying to give you guys, whether you sign up with us at a later date or you just use it and say, hey, that's a really good idea, and you pass it off to your intern to take your podcast to write the article on it. If we can increase your sales, that's whether you utilize us or not. That's all I'm concerned about. I could argue we're probably, with all of our companies, giving away more for free than the other folks, the experts charge you for. So, but using different collaterals, it will get you to different markets and also to sometimes different demographics. But you bring up a valid point. Sometimes you always thought, well, we'll do the podcast for the people that want to see the videos, on YouTube, or the podcast if they just want to hear them. And I was kind of thinking they're more visual or auditory, but you got a good point. A lot of it may be the same person, just depending on where they are, where they can't necessarily download a video and watch it in an airport, but they can download the program. But it's a way for you to do one thing, and with a very little effort from a relatively small staff, you can take that one thing and turn it into 10 or 15 different collaterals. Allie, with the different platforms that are out there, you kind of speak differently than you would with Facebook or with YouTube or things along those lines. I know we talked last week as far as on video, but I mean, what are your thoughts? Which do you find work best? Does video work better on, let's say, Facebook, or is it just a meme with a small 10-point article on it? I mean, how would we go about taking this and promoting it on Facebook, for instance?
With Facebook, I feel like it's really a place where people want to dig their teeth into content. If you think about it, that's where people go to find political articles. It's where they go to really find content. So that's where you want to post your lengthier articles, where you want to maybe put not something that's like 30 minutes long, but maybe a shorter video where people can go and watch it, because that's where people go to relax and spend a little bit more time. With a platform like Instagram, Instagram was created to really appreciate the integrity of photos. And so blasting out a picture with a huge caption about what wonderful things your company is doing might not have the same effect as posting a meme with a really, really good point that you had in your article.
Okay.
So it's really just knowing what your platform needs. And then with Twitter, you want to just have bursts of, this is the idea that we're having, this is our content, but you don't want the same depth as you would as with Facebook or LinkedIn.
Okay, that makes sense. I think I heard Gary V once say, and this is something that I know you and I had talked about doing an entire article on it, but he's absolutely right. If you take a look at, the cell phones here, the cell phones are in essence the TVs of the 1960s. And one thing that you need to make sure of is, and Allie, you and I are at opposite ends of the spectrum. You're that young, hip or whatever, kid that's coming up. You're going to digest your media differently than an old guy that was raised on TV. But I can tell you this, for people that say, well, TV and the traditional methods still work, they couldn't be further from the truth. And the reason for that is everybody I know even has a Netflix account, and that's how we stream TV. I would hate to be an owner of a TV station, because you can see where their membership or their viewership is going down. But this is a TV, and you need to figure out how to get yourself on those platforms. And the best analogy that I had heard from Gary was, you look at Facebook almost as your talk show. It's where you can kind of go through and whatever you and kind of get personal and more in depth. Look at Twitter almost as your reality show. Look at YouTube as almost your sitcoms that are in syndication, because the longer that something stays on YouTube, it typically raises in popularity, where typically Facebook is more what's happening now. To where what's true today, it's not like anybody's going to go back and look at what you posted on Facebook 6 months ago. They're going to look at stuff that's more current. So it's going to depend on the demographic. But if there's a lot of talk, and I know your generation says, Facebook's dead and all of that, and that very well may be true for your generation and moving forward. But one thing that I find is, for age 30 to 50 and 55, Facebook is very much alive and well. And right now, that's going to change over the next 10 years. But we're typically the ones that are writing the checks for whatever the product is that's being bought. And I've had clients tell me, well, or I've had clients tell our consultants over at Recruiting Staffing Solutions, well, Facebook we think is dead. And then they'll say that in one method. Then they'll say, well, Facebook's changing the world. I mean, they've got this political system. There's been coups in countries and political unrest it's creating. So in one thing, they basically say Facebook is dead. Then they're blaming for all the world scourge. So if Facebook can change the political spectrum and have coups and unrest in countries, to say that you can't sell your staffing or recruiting service on Facebook, you're probably missing the point. So anyway, the biggest way, and one of the things I wanted to share with you guys, and Allie, thank you for the content on that, is is you record one, if you do one webinar, you can turn that one webinar into memes. You can turn that one webinar into articles. You can turn it into a podcast. You can turn it into a webinar. You can turn it into, bullet points on a checklist. You can use it as audio. So you don't have to do 10 different things. You can do one thing and then strip it and rearrange it and use it on the platform that works best in that media. And you had an excellent point that reason why I have this and the reason why we do this meeting on Mondays is so I can learn stuff as an old guy. But one thing that you had mentioned is, with Instagram, it's the integrities of pictures. It's basically pictures worth 1,000 words kind of thing.
It was created almost as like a personal scrapbook. So you don't want to be disruptive in the environment that you're in. And I feel like that's the most important thing is before you go and blast a whole bunch of content, really look around at what your competitors are doing, what other companies that aren't necessarily in your field, but pertain to the type of advertising you want to do. How are they chameleoning in with all of the other information? Because the last thing you want to do is be disruptive, because I feel like that would be worse than not being there at all, because people don't really like being disrupted in their day.
Sure. No, that's a good point. Well, hopefully everybody found this edition of our Monday morning meeting informative. If you'd like to learn more how to work a little closer with us, certainly email Allie at, and that's ALLY at eluckglobal.com. She's our brand manager for our companies. But if you want to see how the magazine and its digital side of the business can work with you a little closer, don't hesitate to send her an email. And we'll see you next week on our next edition. And we're going to cover something that I think a lot of folks are going to be very surprised to hear our viewpoints on. So we'll look forward to seeing you next week. See you later in the week, Allie. Thanks for your help.
Bye-bye.